Well, hey there everybody, it's your boy Snackbox coming to you from what is probably the most beautiful day Atlanta has had in the entire 2021 year. It is just glorious, beautiful here. I'm super amped to be coming to you to talk to you about segment 21 of the Colorado Trail. That's right, if segments were years, at this point the Colorado Trail would be totally legal to go smash some Four Locos. That's as excited as I am right now to talk to you about this segment because it is so surprising in so many ways, some good, some tough, and we've got a lot to cover, not a lot of time. Let's get to it. Is it weird that people complain about how heavy a Nalgene is at like 4 ounces, but nobody ever talks about how heavy a watermelon is, or even a Camel? All right, so segment 21 of the Colorado Trail goes from San Luis Pass all the way to the Spring Creek Trailhead. It goes up in elevation about 3,100 feet and down in elevation about 4,200 feet over the course of about 14.8 miles. Those numbers should signal to you that this is a hard segment. There's just no way around it, and it's particularly hard because about 6 miles of that will be spent on Snow Mesa, which is a pretty gentle sort of rise and fall. You will go up a little bit and down a little bit, maybe 100 feet at a time, sort of waves its way across the mesa. What that also means is that this is really about 3,100 feet up, 4,200 feet down over the course of something more like 9 miles, because that middle section doesn't really account for much of the elevation rise and fall. It is just gnarly in certain parts of it, and we need to talk about that a little bit. So let's get to some of my best tips for making your way successfully through segment 21 of the Colorado Trail. First thing you need to know about this segment of the Colorado Trail is that from segment 20, what will happen is you're gonna come down from San Luis Peak, or that sort of saddle just below San Luis Peak, and you're gonna make your way down and then kind of drop off into this valley. There's sort of a saddle there, and in that saddle, that's where the segment ends, and that's where the side trail to Creed goes. So if you're deciding you're going to stop in Creed, then you're going to hang a left there and go about 10 miles down a dirt road. I believe the dirt road is State Road 503 or 530, one of the two. That road will take you into Creed. From that saddle though, if you decide to continue on, you're going to be able to see much earlier that it goes straight up. So over the course of about 1.5 miles, it's going to go up in elevation about 1,000 feet. So that is just brutal. It is so much climbing in a very short time. There is some switchbacking, but what you need to know first is that first climb accounts for 1/3 of all elevation gain in the whole segment. So you're going to start off with a really tough climb. So my first tip to you is actually kind of complicated. You're going to have to follow me on this one a little bit. A lot of people have to make the decision here of going over to Creed, making that left and going to Creed, or continuing on the 15 miles or so to the Spring Creek Pass Trailhead, where you can then catch a ride into Lake City. A lot of people make this decision and they think about the actual cities themselves, but I want you to think differently about this segment. There are 2 different ways to go about it, so I'm not going to discourage you from taking the route to Creed, but I want you to think about the sort of bigger picture. At this point in the hike, you will have come about 100 miles, give or take a few miles, from the Monarch Pass, where most of you all will have gotten your last resupply. So I really like to go to Lake City from this point, because what that means is I'm going to make my way up this really burly climb with my lightest pack possible, because I've had eaten most of my food at this point. Ultimately, here's how the tip kind of breaks down. If you decide you're going to go into Creed, what I recommend is also planning to stop in Silverton or Lake City. Lake City is probably a little too close because it's only 15 miles down the trail from there, but if you stop in Creed and then you stop in Silverton, that means you only have to carry about 3 days of food depending on how fast you hike. Some of you might even be able to do it with 2 days of food because it's only about 54 miles or so. So 2, 3, even 4 days of food if you're a slower hiker, that's totally fine, but it's going to mean you're going to have less food on your back when you go up over these harder climbs from this point. That's really why I like to go into Lake City at this point, because Lake City has much better accommodations. They've got more options for lodging. They also have better grocery store, other food options, etc. They've got a lot of good stuff. They've got a library there that you can check your internet, all of those different things. You can also from there try to find a room in Silverton a few nights over, because Silverton tends to book up really quickly, and the last few rooms in Silverton tend to be these sort of bougie posh hotels. If you haven't booked in advance, are going to be in excess of $200-300 a night, which can be very costly, obviously. So Lake City I really like for this one, especially because you go over that climb with only 1 day of food, maybe a day and a half of food if you have a little bit of extra, and then you get to Lake City and it's pretty easy to catch a ride into Lake City. It has a lot of great stuff going on in it, so I generally think Lake City is probably a better choice, and that's about 357 miles down the trail. Sets you up nicely for a last stop in Silverton before then you make your final push through the San Juan Mountains, which is going to require you to be rested up and ready to go. That's another reason I really like that Lake City stop. The next tip, this one is also a little bit complicated, but I want you to follow me on this. That basically what will happen is you're going to go up over this big rise, you're going to dip down into a valley, then you're going to have to re-climb up from there, and that's going to start lining you up to drop down onto Snow Mesa. So there's a lot of this rise and fall early where you're going to be going over sort of what seems kind of like the outside of a mountain ridge, or sort of if the mountain's here, you're kind of dipping over the side a little bit as you make your way around. I hope that's clear. It probably isn't. What will happen then is you're going to need to really pay attention to the weather, because once you make that next climb right before Snow Mesa, it's going to start about 4 miles into the section. Once you start making that climb to go towards Snow Mesa, you're going to be above 12,000 feet for about 8 miles or so. It means a lot of exposure. So if there's a storm pushing in, the good news is you should be able to see it. They will likely push in from your right. Obviously, keep an eye on all directions, but as you're going up over this rise, they're often going to be coming in from your right, and just make some really tough decisions at that point and to keep yourself safe. If you end up pushing through that segment and the storm pushes in, you don't want to be up above tree line in this area. It's not safe, and you don't want to be in a situation like that. So if you get to that 4 mile mark, even if your plan had been to get a lot closer to Lake City for the next day to sort of line up early and have a Nero the next morning, still stop early. You can stop early. About 4 miles in, there's a campsite right by a river. There are plenty for 2 or 3 tents there, and then you can make your way over to Lake City and be there for breakfast the next morning if you start early enough. Now, sort of corollary with that, if you do end up making that decision to push forward and then you find yourself up in that high elevation and it starts to look really scary, there is a spot where what will happen is you're basically going to climb up over this ridge, and then you're going to go around the outside of this ridge. And so it's going to be sort of a sweeping, you'll be able to see the trail for miles and miles ahead. And you'll be able to start to see Snow Mesa off in the distance. And so you'll be able to see the way the trail's going to go. Now, if you end up on that ridge line and it starts to get scary, it did for me a couple of different times. If it starts to get scary, there's the Rough Creek and Tumble Creek Trail. You'll see a sort of keyhole in the side of the mountain that you're going to be wrapping around. And in that keyhole, you can take refuge and take safety by dipping down there and going maybe a mile or so toward tree line to where you can get down toward safety and in a better situation. So know that there is an exit route if you need it at that point. The last tip that I have for you is to really pay attention to where you're going to stop for the night. And this one is really key, because in the last bit of the section, you're going to get to the edge of Snow Mesa. It is literally just going to fall right off the bottom. You're going to go through some rocky, craggy sort of areas. Watch your ankles, be really careful, but know that from the spot you leave Snow Mesa, where you start dipping down all the way to the Spring Creek Pass trailhead, there's not really a good camp spot. There's not going to be water nearby. They'll be overgrown, and it's also on that steep decline, so there's not a really good level spot through there. Stop honking your horn, man. You'll make your way off of Snow Mesa. I can't get this right for the life of me. Now, if it's late enough in the day that you feel safe, I would recommend trying to find a good spot on Snow Mesa. It's nice and flat, the ground is good and soft, but you really want to be careful at this point, because if you set up too early and the storm pushes in, you could be in some trouble. And also make sure you choose a campsite really wisely, because it's so flat on Snow Mesa relative to the rest of the trail that if you set up in a spot that's even a low spot in the sort of surrounding 100 yards, you could end up in a puddle, which is not a great thing. I ended up getting caught in the rain in this segment, and Snow Mesa was sort of a relief for me to be able to set up somewhere a little bit lower than on that ridge line, but it was still a little bit uncomfortable, and I ended up with a lot of wet gear the next morning. So just know that this is a really great section. It can be really beautiful. If you go through and it's not rainy, pay attention to that sun exposure. This would be one of those other spots that would be great if you decide to take a sun umbrella to have it with you. But just know that once you leave Snow Mesa, you've basically committed to going all the way to the Spring Creek Pass trailhead. You can camp sort of at the end. There's sort of there's a spot near the road that people have camped in the past. I don't think it's allowed technically because it's too close to the road. However, once you get to the end of that segment, there is a bathroom there that's good to know about, and you can also make your way in a couple 100 yards past that road, camp for the night, and then make your way back to the road and hitch into Lake City if that's your plan. Typically, Lake City is a town that is a lot of outdoorsy people, a lot of fly fishing in the area. My experience has been with all the hikers and outdoorsy people in that town, it's typically fairly reasonable to expect that you can catch a hitch pretty easily, although it can be a little bit tricky. So just be patient, you'll get there. I did want to talk a little bit about food storage up on Snow Mesa, because this is about 12,000 feet. It is a challenging one because at this point, you're basically in a spot where you can, if you have your Ursack and your ops bag, then you can probably just leave it outside of your tent. But basically at this point, you just have to do your best to keep it safe, because there won't be any trees on Snow Mesa to hang your bag. There is some wildlife up there, especially rodents that can get to your bag. So considering this is a good spot where if you decide to bring a bear canister, you're in good shape. If you decided to bring an Ursack, this is probably good shape too, especially with that OPSAC where you can keep the smells in the odor-proof bag kind of contained. Ultimately though, what I can say is that this is one of the more challenging sections of the entire trail because of that Snow Mesa. And so just be aware of it, that one spot about is a respite from the rest of the sort of the more difficult climbing, but just be really ready for it. I think at this point, if you've made it 21 segments in the Colorado Trail, you're gonna be fine. Just be ready for those first 2 or 3 big climbs at the front of the trail. Hang in there, you're gonna do great. It's a really cool segment with a lot of really cool high alpine kind of brushy areas. There's a spot where sort of in the middle, you're gonna go through this really beautiful kind of shrubbery scrub brush where you're walking, and it's just super cool. It really is genuinely one of the cooler segments. And then when you get to the end of it, when you leave Snow Mesa, the columbines are everywhere. They were last year. I saw more columbines leaving Snow Mesa than I saw the rest of the trail combined. It was really incredible. If you've not seen a columbine, they're just beautiful flowers. They're super cool because they've got 2 different colors of petals that are sort of, they're purple and white, and the inner one is white and the outer one is purple. It's just cool. I'll try to put a clip of one here. Well, everybody, this is a longer one, and it's clear that I'm getting excited about the Colorado Trail because I'm ready to talk about it constantly. I hope you're getting excited too. For me, it's about a month and a half away. Super amped to hopefully get to meet many of you out on the trail. I've really enjoyed getting to know so many of you and really starting to build some of those friendships. So grateful for all of you joining. If you're not a community member yet, click that subscribe button so you can be a part of this community and stay up to date. And hopefully I get to meet you somewhere down on the trail. Also, if you find this information useful, I hope that you'll click that like button because that lets me know that these are the types of things you'd like to see more of in the future. And it really just helps the channel sort of grow. And finally, if you are a community member, or even if you're not, it doesn't really matter. I just want to say thank you to you for watching these videos and being part of my little community. So find me on Instagram at Backcountry Champion. Send me a message, say, hey, Snackbox, send me one of your outside comfort zone stickers. I've got one right here, actually. I will send one over to you free in the mail. You don't even have to pay for it. I've been sending them out like crazy and really enjoying doing that. It's just my little way of saying thank you to you for being part of this group. So grateful for all of you out there. I hope it's great wherever you are. Looking forward to talking to you in the next installment when we talk about segment 22 of the Colorado Trail. I just can't believe it. Segment 22 is really an entry point into some of the Narnia sections of the Colorado Trail. There's some segments starting in 22 and moving forward that are just going to absolutely blow your mind. You're heading into some of my favorite parts of the Colorado Trail. Of course, a lot of them are my favorites, but you get the idea. Hope you're doing well, and I will look forward to seeing you soon. This is Snackbox out, everybody. Check out these stunners, by the way. If you wear glasses or a contacts wearer, I pick these up. They're prescriptions so that I can wear them on the Colorado Trail. And if you get the blue on the lenses, then people will know that you're like 1 bucket hat away from making the X Games. You know what I mean?